Hi everyone. I have something that I'd like to share with you today. It's something I came across a little while ago, much to my surprise I might add. It's a notebook that I carried around with me during the Rhodesian Bush War. It's one of several, but I'm afraid the others, with the passage of time, have either been mislaid or lost. I don't know what's happened to them, but one has survived. And I'd like to just page through this with you.
Well, let's make a start then. Here on the inside page, we can see a layout of the maps that were issued to me. Each map was approximately 25 by 25 grid squares. In other words, it would cover an area of approximately 600 kilometers. And just in case any follow-ups led me off the map, I had these adjacent maps as well, 9 in all, and they would cover an area of about maybe 5,500 square kilometers. To put it into perspective, this would be an area about the size of the state of Delaware, and we would have 16 men looking after an area that size. Well, it would depend, of course, on the operational necessities. If there was an increased presence in the area, men would be brought in. But generally, the army was very stretched, and this gives you some idea of it. You may notice on the other side of the page the name of the man that was arguably, in his time, the world's greatest elephant conservationist. And I was very privileged to have him serve with me in my call sign. Most of this notebook contains what you might call just scraps of technical information, and perhaps on another occasion we can do another video and go back over some of this, and I can explain what it is. Here's an interesting page here, a contact at that location, 1-2 Echo, and then I suppose a couple of days later, a contact 1-3 Bravo. That was my call sign, Sunday afternoon at 4:30, and it was in connection with this follow-up here. This is of some interest to me. These are notes that I made at a briefing between myself and the platoon commander. Nobody else was present at that time. You can see it was on a Wednesday, 8th of March. And he had asked me to take my call sign and 3 other call signs. So the army must have been in a pretty generous mood at that time. And to go 2 kilometers into Mozambique, across the border, and look for a base camp. And I had made a note there that I would require these maps with me. And I was told that as far as the enemy presence goes there was that suspected base camp, but in addition to that, there was a platoon of Frelimo regulars in the area, reinforced by a home guard. I was told to be very careful not to compromise the operation at all, because the locals would report our presence to Frelimo. And that may have presented a bit of difficulty to the army, because there was no air support, there was no support of any kind. If we were compromised, we would have to fight our way back across the border back into Rhodesia. So there are some notes over here, strict instructions that I was given, and the inference is that if I hadn't been given these orders, that I may have acted contrary. No Frelimo to be killed, no home guard to be killed, no prisoners to be taken and brought back into the country. So that was the Wednesday. I was to leave and then return at 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon after accomplishing this task, and be picked up near a path. Well, the next couple of pages are just some notes on the men that I had available to me and how I wanted them dispersed. I had divided the men up into different groups. These were the actual soldiers that would be going with me into Mozambique. The others I wanted to leave on the border to just reinforce a crossing point for me, should I have to come back in a hurry. And we set off, and very near the border, less than a kilometer away, night fell, and I led the men off the path. And I set up a guard as follows: from sundown till 11 that night, these two men would be on duty. And then thereafter, I broke the guard up into half-hour stints. I had plenty of men, and it was something that was more convenient to do in this manner. However, during the night, I got a radio call to tell me that I was to abandon this operation and get back onto the road as soon as possible after dawn, ready for pickup and to be choppered off to Kachuta. And so the next day we were dropped off, and you can see the details here where we were. We were looking for a spoor of 15 terrorists, and then here's a very brief note: on tracks. We must have slept on the spoor that night. Thursday, Friday, we're still trailing them, and I still have all my men with me from the abandoned external operation. We're following the gooks. They had eaten at these locations, and the information that we got from the locals there was that they had taken some sadza. Sadza is the staple diet of Zimbabwean tribesmen to this day. It's a nice meal. It's made from ground maize meal, nutritious, very tasty. I enjoy it very much. And these terrorists had asked for some sadza, which they took away with some vegetables, and this had all been put in a plastic bag. They inquired about schools in the vicinity, which was always alarming when you hear a report like this, because they could, if they had the opportunity, round up the youngsters and take them with them. Many of these abductees eventually would find themselves in base camps across in Mozambique, and there they would be indoctrinated and in turn would become terrorist fighters. They also asked about stores in the area, and that also was a thing of concern, because it seemed that stores were always a legitimate target in the eyes of the terrorists. They ransacked these places, they looted them, they burned them to the ground, they carted off everything that they could, usually on their way back to their base camps in the neighboring countries. It affected the locals. They had no supplies. The poor shopkeeper was made bankrupt, and they couldn't care less about that. They were there to liberate the country, and to hell with all the hardships they caused to everybody else in the process. So we got more information as we continued along their spoor. We were told that they were seen to be wearing green overalls, some details about the boots that they had on. Their equipment was all new, heavy packs, a lot of equipment, chest webbing, belts, water bottles, possible grenades. Yeah, they had grenades. No mortars or rockets. That also turned out to be incorrect. They did have rockets with them. No RPDs seen, but 3 RPDs suspected. They inquired about security forces. They'd come to free the country. They were confident. And they spoke Makaranga and Tsindebele, which indicated to us that this was something unusual about this group. We were accustomed to meeting Shona-speaking Zanla insurgents, but these men clearly were from Zipra, which was a little bit unusual in that area. We didn't often come across Zipra. And here you can see some of the additional call signs that the army had put at my disposal, apart from the 3 that I already had: Juliet Delta, Foxtrot X-ray, and these were mounted horsemen. I never did meet them, but they were in the vicinity. If I needed them, I could call upon them. Very nice. Golf Yankee. So a nice group of men that I could also use. And this is just some back bearings of features. And I had to convey my radio messages via relay station. And I wrote some of this down so that I would be clear in what I wanted said. And I'm cross-graining to the north about 1 kilometer from the river. 13 Alpha to patrol north along the river to that position, and then stop and wait there, and they must notify me when they are there. Foxtrot Victor to patrol north to that position, then stop and wait for me. I will be coming west from the river to clear the hill feature directly to their east. They must exercise caution, as the Charlie Tangos have used that feature on 3 occasions this week as an observation post. So a word of caution to my guys, and these were some of the instructions that I conveyed to them via the relay station. And so the follow-up proceeded, and bang, there we have it. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 13 Bravo, my call sign, contact with the enemy at that position. Never mind, this was also of interest to me. In amongst the belongings of a terrorist was this cigarette card bearing the image of the very famous film star Jane Russell. And I turned it over, and on the reverse, somebody, in a handwriting even worse than mine if it was possible, had scrawled these words, and I tried to write them down, but I couldn't even decipher it. Thomas somebody or other. And then an address garbled here. But some of it was clear enough for me to record Ermelo, Transvaal, South Africa. Well, this changed the whole complexion of the contact, because I could now see that not only were these Zipra fighters that we had just engaged, this was an element of the African National Congress. Now, what these people would do is, and it was a very ambitious scheme, I must say, and I don't know how much success they had in it, they would cross the Zambezi River in a group and then travel down the length of Rhodesia till they got to the Limpopo River, very, very, very far to the south. And they would cross the Limpopo and then be on their home territory in South Africa. I don't know how many of them made this arduous journey. This lot certainly didn't. They were scattered to the 4 corners of the earth after that contact, and I don't even know how many of their survivors made it back over the Zambezi into Zambia, where they had come from. And then just a couple of lock stats, location statements following that contact, probably as we move to a pickup point. And then here's the thing. One moment you're getting ready for an external operation, and the next minute that's cancelled. And then we had this very interesting engagement with these Zipra and ANC troops. And then immediately after that, we had to pack up in a hurry, because we had to be back in Salisbury the next afternoon and demob that night. And you know, that transition was always very difficult for me. One moment you're lying with your face blackened in ambush all night, with your finger on the trigger, so to speak, and then like 72 hours later you're supposed to be walking in between the machines of a factory and checking on what seemed absolute trivia to me. And it was hard for me to bear in mind that the whole reason we were fighting the war, or one of the reasons, was to keep the wheels of industry turning. And it just seemed like civilian life, to me at any rate, was something that was just filled with a lot of unimportant things. And I sometimes feel like that to this very day. I can see trivia where it sticks out like a sore thumb, and other people get excited about things that are absolutely of no consequence in this world. And so that was the life of a territorial soldier. In action one day, back in civilian street the next.
Well, there it is. A souvenir from a bygone age, something that I have found has jogged my memory in many respects. I have found it interesting to be reminded of some of these things, and I hope you found it interesting too. May I just say again that I'm very appreciative of all your kind and gracious remarks. Thank you very much for that. And until next time, keep well and take care.